I evaluate composition of inverse trigonometric functions. Well, in order to do that, we need these two boxes here. It says that the composition of trigonometric functions of sine inverse of x is equal to x for all x in the domain of sine inverse. There's also the special cases where it's like reversed, right? Sine inverse of sine of x equals to x for all x in the range of sine inverse of x. Now, the domain of the inverse functions are listed here and the ranges are listed here. Okay, so let's do this one. Notice that this one is one of the special cases. So cosine inverse of cosine of negative pi over 4. Now negative pi over 4 is not in the range of cosine inverse because the range of cosine inverse is from 0 to pi. But we can find the corresponding angle for which that is equal to. So negative pi over 4 is in the fourth quadrant. Okay, it's this one right here. Now cosine in the first quadrant is positive radical 2 over 2. Now the corresponding angle from 0 to pi is pi over 4, right? Because it's also radical 2 over 2. So this is basically saying cosine inverse of radical 2 over 2, which is equal to pi over 4. Now you could have also noticed that cosine is even, therefore cosine of negative pi over 4 is the same thing as cosine of pi over 4. And then pi over 4 is in the interval 0 to pi, so this will equal pi over 4. Now very similar to this one, sine inverse of sine of 2 pi over 3. Again, 2 pi over 3 is not in the range of sine inverse, right? So let's locate the corresponding angle to 2 pi over 3. 2 pi over 3, the corresponding angle will be radical 3 over 2 for the value of 2 pi over 3, which is also corresponding to pi over 3 in the first and fourth quadrant. So this becomes sine inverse of radical 3 over 2, which equals to pi over 3. Okay, notice that they're not equal in terms of angles, but they're equal in terms of the evaluation of them. Okay, so let's continue. Oops, there you go. Now here it's a little tricky now because it's different, right? So what do we do in situations where it's different? So first, sine inverse of radical 3 over 2, well, sine in the domain is from -1 to 1, so radical 3 over 2 is in the domain, and then it produces a value in this range from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So what would it correspond? Well, sine inverse of radical 3 over 2 is going to be pi over 3, right? Because it's the y value for which the angle is between pi over 3, negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So this becomes, cosine of pi over 3. Well, what is cosine of pi over 3? Well, it's 1/2. Same deal, tangent inverse of radical 3 over 3. The range of radical 3 over 3 is from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, not inclusive. So we look for the corresponding angle. Tangent inverse of radical 3 over 3 is when sine over cosine is 1/2 over radical 3 over 2. So this is equal to sine of pi over 6, which is equal to 1/2 as well. Okay. Now, could we do the other way? Could we reverse these orders and get an answer? Well, let's see. Cosine of cosine inverse of negative pi over 4. Okay. Well, in order to solve this, we need to verify that negative pi over 4 is in the domain of cosine inverse. What is the domain of cosine inverse? It has to be from -1 to 1 as a value, right? Now, is negative pi over 4 between -1 and 1? Now here, you have to visualize negative pi over 4 as a numerical value. That means you actually have to divide pi over 4. But pi is 3.14. And 3.14 divided by 4 is going to be a fraction that is between -1 and 1. So this is actually equal to negative pi over 4. Using this identity. Okay, this one right here. Now, let's see the other way for this one. Sine of sine inverse 2 pi over 3. Now, 2 times 3.14 is approximately 6 point something or 7 point something. If you divide that by 3, it's going to give you a number that is greater than 1. Therefore, this is not inside your domain. So 2 pi over 3 is not inside the domain. Therefore, this is undefined. Okay? So whenever a value goes outside your domain, then is undefined. Now, let me pull out the calculator. Look at if we go second here, we 2 times pi divided by 3, right? We press sine inverse of that, it says not a number, okay? That's what it means. But now, put pi, pi divided by 4, and we take the inverse cosine, that is a number, okay? So that's how you will find these values. If you like the video, subscribe to Motival or Mr. Bonet. Share with your friends, share with the people that need help on these topics. And you can also visit us at www.motival.com. Thank you.